Welcome back to Hard Factor. Donald Trump Jr. Don, thanks for coming on the show again. Thank you for coming back.
Good to be with you guys.
Hey, so Don, a little known fact here. You are one of very few non-Barstool personality guests to make multiple appearances, and no one has come on for a third time. And if you do come on for a third time, you get a free Hard Factor t-shirt. So just got to throw that carrot out there.
Sweet. Well, listen, I'll do a lot for a t-shirt. I mean, I can be bought.
That's right.
Also,
plan on that.
The caveat is I wore the shirt for a week.
Well, as long as you don't wash it, I'm still game.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We're down.
It's gonna have that musk on it.
It's about another man's musk.
Also, condolences we wanted to send to your family. The passing of your uncle Robert. I think over the weekend, or last Friday. So
sorry to hear that.
Anything you wanted to say about him? Sorry about that.
No, just he was a good guy. It was sort of it was interesting to see. I mean, I know we live in a pretty polarized world right now, but it was sort of interesting to see Twitter twending wrong Trump within about an hour of his passing on Saturday night, and it's just. It's a pretty sick place we live at times, man, especially Twitter. That place is where the deranged hang out. And, I guess I'm one of those sometimes. But, even I have boundaries. Apparently some of them don't.
Everybody's a masochist, and 2020 has lost its mind with that.
That was not okay. Yeah.
Wasn't nice.
No.
But let's move on to some nicer stuff. Since we last talked, which was March 11th, some cool stuff has happened. A pretty good interview between El Prez, Dave Portnoy, and the actual Prez, your dad, going on in the Rose Garden. Did you have any hand in that? Did you help set anything up?
I think that sort of happened on its own. I've gone back and forth with Dave a couple times. Slipped into each other's DMs.
Hell yeah.
And it was pretty cool to see though, because again, I think as it comes to especially sports, honestly, my dad knows more about sports than anyone. It's sort of amazing. He's a real sports fanatic and junkie. He gets it. He's been a part of it for years, and he's got a insane memory, so he remembers some of these things. We went to the UFC in New York a couple of months ago. Roberto Duran was in the front row, right next to us, and my dad started talking. Remembered the first time he met him at one of the fights in AC, and this guy couldn't believe that the president of the United States remembered him, let alone the details of the fight, and picked them out. 40 years after his career. It was just pretty cool to see.
To be fair, Roberto Duran has been punched in the head a lot, so he's amazed about a lot of things, probably.
You could tell him you were his first wife. He's going to be like, oh, wow.
Dave did say that memory was very impressive in that interview. Also, another thing that happened since last time we talked, Joe Rogan tweeted out just this last weekend about the Canadian studies showing that marijuana could potentially prevent coronavirus. It's also good for CTE, PTSD, football players, troops. Last time we were here, we were talking about what if weed was good for corona. Could we see marijuana legalization under a Trump administration, the current one?
I don't know. It's not an issue. I'm outside of the administration, so I don't get involved in it. But certainly from a medicinal standpoint, I personally, definitely get it. And I'm a big states' rights guy, so I'd kick it to the states and get rid of some of the federal stuff. But that's just me. I think right now, dealing with everything, dealing with the coronavirus, dealing with all of those things, it's probably not not the biggest issue right now in the midst of a pandemic.
What about that state tax revenue? They could use it. They could use it.
That in some cases, I don't know if it's been as good as people have hoped. I mean, I think if you look at some of the states, certainly you speak to law enforcement, like in Colorado, which I do, because I want to get both sides of the story. They're like, listen, it actually hasn't solved the crime problem because the cost is so high that it never eliminated the black market that exists. So you still have, some of that issue.
True.
So, again, but I'm sort of libertarian on the issue, and in general, if people want to do it, it doesn't bother me much at all.
Maybe costs could shrink
if
it was done federally. That question was brought to you by Caliper CBD. Excellent
which actually doesn't have any THC in it. They want to point that out. But we will. Like you mentioned with the wrong Trump and stuff, there's a lot of venom and stuff going on in the world right now. Maybe everyone could use a little marijuana to chill out during these trying times of COVID and 2020. And I don't know.
Well, listen, certainly at this stage, I think we'd probably give anything a try to get just people to calm down and normalize. Right?
That's right.
The hysteria is pretty impressive. I mean, the outrage cycle never ends. And the problem is it's also so quick that by the time we finish this Zoom call, we will have gone through 3 outrage outbreaks of which we may not even understand, but they will have come and gone by the time we get done talking.
That's right. We've actually got someone fact-checking outrage right now, so they're going to zip in and let us know if any outrage pops up, and we'll get to the bottom.
We got live text updates if there's a new outrage cycle.
Follow up on the weed. We had Rick Grinnell on recently, awesome guy, and he mentioned that you do know about the aliens. He admitted to the aliens, and we said we had Donald Trump Jr. on, and he said he didn't know if they were aliens, and he threw you under the bus, and he's like, of course Don knows about the aliens, so would you like to come clean?
That's what he told us, so.
Yeah, hey, listen, I tried. I do like a triggered campaign podcast kind of thing where we have some fun and do some, some interesting interviews, not just all political, like just throw some humor into it, sort of like what you guys do. And so I had my dad on, and that was my big question for him because I wanted to know.
That's right.
He sort of left it pretty ambiguous. I'm like, wait a minute, like this wasn't
he knows.
Like, oh no, he's like, it's pretty interesting what's going on there.
What
I can't
is
talk
it?
about it, but I'm like, wait a minute, that sounded like a yes to me.
I feel like as soon as they give you the information, they tell you like, hey, now that you have, it must be so interesting because everyone that gets the information is so able to cover up the fact that they know. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the one thing you think with all the other leaks out of government that you'd probably know definitively what it would be if there is. But I'm just like playing the odds. Like, when you think about the size of the universe, what are the chances are that something else doesn't exist out there? It's almost
right.
We're the only anomaly in a universe that's larger than something anyone could even fathom. Like, I don't know. I imagine there is something there. It's whether we have it locked up in Roswell or not, I don't know.
There's a very pessimistic study out there from some philosophers that say it counteracts the argument of like, yes, that's so big that something's out there. And it says, yes, something's out there, but it's probably already destroyed itself by now. So that's why you haven't seen it. That's
probably true. I imagine there's civilizations in other places that have come and gone.
Right, exactly.
Look at what we're doing in 2020. I mean,
but that doesn't mean there's not one currently out there that has more advanced technologies perhaps than we have. So
agreed. All right. I mean, that was my. Is it back to me? That's my fault.
You're gonna.
So I'm wearing this tie-dye Hokies shirt because I went to Virginia Tech and I'm ready for some ACC football. What the hell is going on with the? What's up with the fucking Big Ten? Can we get a message out to your dad to force them to play? I don't. Yeah.
He's been pretty vocal about that. I mean, he wants them to play. I mean. And when you think about COVID-19, obviously you want to take it seriously, but like the reality is the people who are most affected are the elderly and people with pre-existing conditions. I don't think that college football players who are probably in the 0.0001% of like in badass shape, they're probably, I would think it's a non-factor for them. They want to play. It's, it's also not one of these things where you have a 20-year career. I mean, you got 4 years in college to make it, which sets up your other career. You miss one season, you miss a formative year for the young players coming in. You miss an outbreak season for the older players getting ready to maybe go to the NFL draft. I mean, this is crazy. It seems like they all want to play too.
Yes.
So, I can't help but wonder if there's some sort of political motivation because, hey, if there's no football, we can sort of keep the aura of fear about it. And again, that doesn't mean you don't take it seriously. If you're 85, with diabetes, of course, but like you're probably not playing college football. So, my thing is let them play.
And what about the schools? Follow up, like schools.
I think the same thing, really. Yeah. I mean, when you look at the studies for young children as it relates to all of this, they're just the least susceptible demographic to all of this, to shut down the entire country, to prevent parents from going back to work. And by the way, for those teachers as well as students who may have or may be predisposed, come up with a solution for them, not something that doesn't work for everyone, but come up with those who are actually maybe going to be affected by it and do it that way. And you saw the teachers union, right? Last week, the New York Times did an article. So it wasn't like a biased, conservative publication. It was the New York Times. The teachers union, they don't want to do in-person learning. So just put all your opinions aside, put what the CDC says aside, put what Fauci says aside. They just say, okay, assume that's the case. They also said that they don't want to do online learning. They also said they want to actively fund BLM. They also said they want to defund the police. What does this have to do with teachers? What does this have to do with our children? And so, it makes it clear that the teachers union has nothing. They're not looking to do anything for the children of this country, just pushing a leftist narrative because that's
realistically
what they are.
Realistically, though, what kind of safety protocols do you think are reasonable for people to enjoy school and football this fall?
Well, listen, I think you can do the regular social distancing. I think people can wash their hands. I don't think you need to shake hands. I don't think you need to be in your face. I think you can wear masks. I think there's a lot of stuff that you can do. I mean, you could even sort of stagger classes so kids aren't, coming in all at once. Maybe do partial online learning, partial in-person learning. I mean, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution with college sports. Like, get people tested that day. If they don't show up, let them play. Like, again, an 18, 19-year-old kid in college who runs a 4.340 and benches 400 pounds, probably not going to be susceptible to the Rona the way that, again, an 85-year-old guy with diabetes is. To treat them the same does both of them a disservice.
Well, you have, is it 5 kids? So
I have 5 kids.
And this is
Strong
you're relatively young guy. Are they of school age? Like, what's going to go on?
They are. I'm sort of 13 down to 6. So they're all they're all of that age. The real issue is what the schools themselves decide to do, right? So my kids they've been out of the city for the quarantine purposes, but they've done a lot of the stuff online. Some of their schools aren't even going to open up, period. So they're just forced to do the online. If I had my way, if there was full-time online learning, that's what I would have them do. But I'm also divorced, so I'm not the only one deciding on it.
100. Let me ask you a question, Don. So my son's about to start school. He starts private school tomorrow. He's doing online learning. What do you think about giving private school people a little bit of a break on that tuition with the online learning?
Hey, by the way, I have 5 kids in private school in New York City, so it ain't cheap.
Ooh, Jesus.
I think they're getting a lot of savings, and you see that with kids in college. They're going back. Oh, is something happening to tuition? No. Well, are we doing anything? No. I mean, half of the college experience, half of the education experience is actually the socialization, right? For young kids, I don't know that they're remembering all that much that they learn in 2nd grade, but it's the being around other kids. It's the conflict resolution. It's all of these things that, again, what makes me so reluctant is I wouldn't send them back if I really thought that they were in danger, but literally the math says that you're not, as a young child. But more importantly, what happens if you lose a year of the 12 years of, elementary education? Like what
you're looking at it, Don.
It's like 8%. You get to wear a tie-dye shirt as a grown-ass man with a beard.
And it's even a bigger percentage for the college football players that can't showcase their tape.
It's so hard to flirt on Zoom. You lose a lot of the flirting aspect of life. So, I get you with the social stuff.
I beg to differ on that. I think that you could DM more effectively. There's a whole...
Some people will thrive, others will
suffer. Appropriate flirting,
It will. There's some natural selection going on in that ability. If you got game, you got game either way.
That's true. Also, if you know how to hack,
game can they can fake it by being in DMs and like taking an hour to look at something and massage the text a little bit differently.
Exactly.
Yeah, the bubbles are going to get people in trouble.
Well, you can eliminate other competitors in the game if you're technologically savvy. Like, you could boot them from the Zoom meeting. You know what I mean? You can get in there one-on-one.
He's pretty Machiavellian about his DM flipping in DM game. I'm impressed.
The Beeve knows his shit. Hey, Don, let me ask you a question. A lot of these anti-maskers are triggered. What's your take on this? These people getting triggered in the grocery store and having freakouts because they're being asked to wear a mask. It seems like that's a conservative right thing right now, where they're saying my freedoms are getting taken away, but it seems like BS to me.
Well, listen, I'm fine wearing a mask. I wear it when I'm out in social things. I don't. My big thing, and I think the conservative viewpoint on it is they don't like the mask mandate. I mean, you saw that Joe Biden came out. You must wear one till November 3rd. I go, well, after that, it just goes away. Like, it sort of feels like there's a control issue. They're just trying. I mean,
but shouldn't a leader on the right come out?
Joe Biden's mouth needs to be discounted because it's not going to make sense anyway. But it's like, seems awfully coincidence that you want to do a 3-month mask mandate that magically ends on November 4th, when many believe that so much of the hysteria around coronavirus will also disappear. So I don't have a problem with a mask. I don't mind people doing it. What I don't like is the notion of forced, big government is going to tell you that you must do this. Because where does it end? Are you going to force people to take a vaccine? Even if it's a good vaccine, like I don't love forcing it. My kids are all vaccinated. I do that. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I just don't love the notion of forcing people to do something and having the government tell you that, because I think it's a slippery slope for the future.
Agreed. But Don, you're a smart guy, right? You're definitely in the higher percentile of intelligence. Doesn't that bug you when you see people that might presumably be in the lower percentile of intelligence or are willfully ignorant for whatever reason, putting everyone at risk because they refuse to wear a mask for some reason other than it has nothing to do with public health. You know what I mean? Or they don't believe it exists.
It doesn't irk me that much. I mean, even the reality is this, though. Even the CDC has sort of flipped on the mask thing a couple of times, right? I mean, when you look at the masks, that they're
Did
wearing.
That have to do with supply, though? That had to do with like the supply in the country, right? At the beginning?
But not really, because then there's the study that say, well, if you don't wear the mask properly and you're touching your face, then you get to carry around the germs on a piece of fabric that's sitting on front of your face that maybe you're more. So I don't know. It was sort of like hydroxychloroquine, right? There's the people that say you don't, the people that say it works. There's doctors and studies out of Yale that say it works. There's the Henry Ford Clinic that says it works. There's those doctors. But I tweeted the video and just said, I didn't say like, hey, this is the gospel. You shouldn't listen to the CDC. I can just go, this is interesting because it's very different than the narrative that's been
right. But that lady was fucking crazy, right?
A friend of my family got healthy from hydroxychloroquine.
That one lady and other things she said in the past, but they don't talk about the 12 other doctors that were there as well that have been treating COVID-19 patients in the field with this stuff and have seen effectiveness. They don't talk about this study out of Yale University, which isn't exactly an alt-right kind of place. Saying that it works. Same with Henry Ford Clinic. It's sort of this, mandate and the censorship side of things. That's what I have a little bit more of a problem with. I see it both ways on the issue. I guess
I meant if they were doing their diligence on curing corona, they would have kicked that lady out of their group. You know what I mean? That's bad company.
Listen, marketing aside, there were still 12 medical doctors there. And that a doctor at Twitter, which I don't believe there are any, would say they're wrong on this issue, again, despite a Yale study, despite a Henry Ford Clinic study saying the otherwise. I mean, even CNN tweeted that, hey, this could be effective, but when I do it, I'm thrown off Twitter.
Well, and doctors have used it.
I wasn't vouching for the science. I just said it's different. And as Americans, I believe that we should be able to hear both sides. We should be able to have that discourse and not let someone decide what can and can't be discussed.
I have a problem with that Twitter thing, too, because I tried to get censored on Twitter using a lot of the verbiage that you're talking about. Will got censored once on Twitter for using a verbiage of 5G and 5G spreading coronavirus, and I tried to use it verbatim, and I wasn't, I guess, popular enough on Twitter to get Jack's
I feel like it's a badge of honor to be censored by Jack, honestly. He's getting more extreme. Yeah,
Mark, I think the real problem is it only happens to one side. So if you're a known conservative guy, if you're, hey, I'm an agitator for sure. I mean, I take on the fight. And again, I'm not looking when people are like, oh, well, start conservative Twitter. I don't want conservative Twitter. I want an equal playing field that I can have my opinions and compare that to those of the other side. I'm willing to engage. I'm willing to have that
discourse.
Fight. Yeah. But those, that's the thing. So if you're, some of the crazy stuff that you've seen from the radical left that they'll put on Twitter, it's like, oh, that's no problem. But I can't name a single person that's like a left-wing person that's been thrown off Twitter, has been deplatformed, demonetized, et cetera.
There's got to be somebody,
it only goes one way.
That's how I'm getting most of my porn these days, is direct from Twitter, which a lot of people don't know. If you get,
there's a ton of porn on Twitter.
If you follow a porn star on Twitter, it's amazing.
Well, back to the vaccine. Would you give your kids the first round of the vaccine? Because I feel like this is going to be the next big issue with this vaccine. It's going to become available.
I don't know. I'm torn on it for myself because the way I look at it is, would I take the first round? It's like, I don't know. I might wait a year or two because the reality is this. I'm 42. I'm in good shape. I keep myself in shape. I have a 99.7% survival rate, if not maybe a little bit better than that. I'm like, I don't know, dude. When I was in college, I probably, rolled the dice at 50-50 most Saturday nights.
That's right.
Right.
I sort of look at it I don't know. I don't know what the side effects are going to be. For children, maybe it's a little different. But, again, kids don't seem all that susceptible to it. The death rate is by far, it's much less than the common flu, from what I've been reading. So, I don't know that I'd want to be the first. I think it's important now. If I was older, if I had a pre-existing condition, if I was one of those people who's in serious trouble with it, I'd be all over it. But so
some people definitely.
Again, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I don't know how. I don't know if it works unless enough people take it. So it's going to be.
They're doing that. you see this study sort of out of Russia where they're like, well, we skipped phase 3 clinical trials. I'm like, wait, like you're sure
don't
it works?
do that.
Like,
Yeah,
way,
don't
sounds
do that.
safe.
Yeah.
That's human
Sounds good,
trial.
yeah.
I could definitely see the Russians just wanting to be the guys to say, hey, we did it. Like, well, we're not going to really test it. It turned you into a turtle, but
They literally called it Sputnik.
Not to sound too insensitive, but if they want to try it first, I mean,
Yeah. The bears
we'll
are fine.
pay
And I'm
attention
fine
to the
with that,
results.
and I think, again, what this administration has done is they've cut so much of the red tape, right? It was sort of part of their thesis prior to this, like get rid of the excessive government regulations, but, they sped up the process so you don't have sort of the arbitrary red tape that you'd have, going through this process. So, Operation like Warp Speed, I mean, they've put stuff into legitimate clinical trials, but like legitimate, where there's science they're backing up, and it's the same thing. But instead of taking 5 years, they've done it in 4 months.
Yeah,
that's the kind of stuff I want to see, but I want to make sure it's still right, and they're doing that so you can maintain sort of the best protections of the system while getting rid of the bullshit bureaucracy and actually end up with a result much faster, much cheaper, and much more effective. But that's not the way DC usually works because they got a lobbyist. They want it to take time. I mean, hydroxychloroquine, it's been on the market for 60 years. It's got to be terrible for you. Well, why? Could it be? Could it be because it's a cheap alternative and you don't have to spend trillions of dollars trying to figure it out? I mean, I don't know. But, stranger things have certainly happened.
Well, there's a new, and there's a new, also there's what is it? Some kind of herb too that people are talking about now.
Yeah,
too.
marijuana.
I think we're moving on.
I say get these
definitely
doctors,
that, but also
just get these doctors
I heard
on
marijuana
meth.
is 100% effective, but that's just me. I don't know. I'm not a
Yeah,
scientist.
Don.
That's right.
Yeah, marijuana.
Yeah,
Don
Don.
Jr. said it first.
That we get all these doctors in Operation on Warp Speed on meth. They don't need to go to sleep. Get them on meth. Keep them up 7 days a week. Let's get this, to get it done quicker.
That's why I thought that's what
like a
Operation
meth
Warp Speed
Adderall
was.
Combo,
Yeah.
and I mean,
Yeah,
you come up with
exactly.
something really good.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit now, Don. I want to ask you about Biden's pick, Kamala Harris. I know there was some birther stuff, with your dad kind of like being on the fence about, I don't know, is she able to be vice president or not? Has that been cleared up with him? I know you said you're out of the administration. Have you talked to them about that?
I haven't spoken to him about it. I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think there's anything there, per se that's a big deal. I mean, she's a great chameleon. She can be all things to all people, depending on what it is. She's got the most liberal record in the Senate. I think she's a great pick for us, in my opinion. Because I think she is so liberal. She is so polarizing. And when you look at Joe Biden, you realize he's not there. Like, Joe Biden's not going to be the guy to be in charge. Kamala Harris couldn't win her own state. Like, guess what? Other than the weather and the scenery, what do you want from California for America? It's like, please don't California my America. Like, I don't want any of that nonsense.
Well, they're trying to. They're moving everywhere. They're moving everywhere from
yeah.
the state. They're moving out. Yeah.
So do you think that let's say in some miracle that Joe defeats your dad and Kamala ends up being vice president? Do you think that in the first term she's going to end up taking over because of Joe's condition? You think that's how it's going to play out? If they end up...
I think the thought leaders of the Democrat Party aren't moderates. I think they're radicals. Honestly, look at Joe Biden. This is on his website. This isn't me making it up. Like, look at the Biden-Sanders joint unity plan. Like, this is not a moderate, but again, the media is so biased that they'll sell to people in working class America. Oh, Joe Biden's a moderate. It's like, well, you're not a moderate adding a $4 trillion tax hike to fund free healthcare, free education for illegals, free housing for criminals coming out of jail, eliminating cash bail, releasing prisoners from prison. I mean, they're shocked in New York City and all these other places. They're releasing rapists, and they're shocked that later on in the day they go and rape someone again. I mean, these people have lost their minds.
You're saying he's a socialist in capitalist clothes, is what's
well, I think the
on
media
here.
I don't know that Joe Biden knows where he is on an average day. I mean, he forgets what state he's in 50% of the time. So I don't think he's in charge of his faculties. I think the media can try to sell him to the American people as a moderate, so they're doing the marketing job for him.
Don, you're going to get us in trouble. We have a 5-joke maximum on Joe Biden's mental health on this show.
We got to keep it.
We do?
But
Yeah.
Per show.
Don,
Per show.
Those issues are not black and white. Those issues are not black and white.
I'm
You
not
pointed
the
out.
only one saying it, guys.
We've said
They
it
want to
too,
get rid
yeah.
of bail because it makes it unfair. There's an alternative to it. They're not black and white issues. You might be right about Joe, but
Well, but there's a lot. I mean, the $4 trillion isn't black and white, right? That's your taxpayer money that you have the privilege of spending to give benefits to those that benefits to others that you don't even get for your own children. I mean, that's pretty scary. When you see the regulative state that they want to put back into things, that would destroy our economy. You see the sort of Green New Deal in another name only. Guess what that's going to do to our economy? It's like it's mind-blowing how dangerous this is.
Yeah, but again,
no one in the media will question that.
The Robert Barons, the Wall Street ripped our economy to pieces anyway. It's like the idea, right?
By the way, Wall Street supports Joe because they know they'll be able to take advantage of it.
Well, Wall Street also supports your father, but yes, understood. I mean,
I think they're happy with the fact that Bernie's not in the general. Let's talk about an example of this happening right now. The post office instead of what's possible after the election. Let's talk about the post office right now. So, Don Jr., what's your spot on that? You want to make it work, make it profitable, or do you want to just pay for it and get it to go so that it can handle the mail-in elections? I mean,
listen, I want these things to work. I mean, no one had a problem when Obama wanted to try to fix the post office 8 years ago. He just couldn't get it done. My father actually had no problem saying, hey, we can do a bailout, but we actually want to include it as part of the package to bail out American taxpayers, not just, a big organization, run by Democrats that basically has lost billions of dollars a year. I think it's like $4 billion a year forever. So, my father's a business guy. That doesn't work. A business that loses $4 billion a year is terribly ineffective, doesn't work. That's not even about the mail-in ballot issue. That in and of itself has its own problems. You saw, whether it's Nevada, New York,
right.
45 days out from their election, they still don't know who won. I was with the daughter of a lieutenant governor of a state earlier this week. She lived in New York City. She goes, I had 4 ballots mailed to my house for different names. People who no longer live there. They just showed up.
Yeah, we know it's messed up.
If you're a nefarious person, you're collecting these things. You could literally collect it. I mean, Jerry Nadler, not exactly a conservative, is on the record saying that this is a failed system. It doesn't work. In Michigan, 8% of the vote that they had in their primary was filled in by people who are dead. This happened this week.
Yeah, cats and dogs. I think a few cats and dogs have gotten ballots too. Yeah.
Well, cats down in Georgia, a cat was dead for 12 years. He died during the Bush administration. He got a ballot.
So it's a perfect storm.
It's not like
here.
absentee balloting where, hey, I choose, I, Don Trump, want to do this. I'm going to be mailing in absentee. Some of the states have the systems in place to deal with that because then you're one-on-one. You're not just saying, hey, I don't know, there's a couple 100 million people. Let's just mail it to where they used to live 7 years ago. And if someone else answers it, who cares? I think we can all
agree.
have a problem with that system.
We can all agree that right now the picture is very shitty of like the combined situation, the funding of the USPS, and also like the prospect of problems with the mail-in voting.
But the big thing is
your
my
gut
father
feeling,
said he would fund it. He would fund it. And by the way, their funding is set through 2021 anyway, so it's not even an issue. But Nancy Pelosi wants to do that, but like she wants to ignore actually doing anything for the American taxpayer. The people who enable all of this, because there is no government-funded programs; they're only taxpayer-funded programs. So my father says, "Hey, I want to handle it as a whole package because I want to get money to the people in America who actually need it right now, not to
stimulus
the Kennedy
and
Center
funding,
for the Arts and all the bullshit that Pelosi put in there." To fund, liberal institutions, and more importantly, to fund Democrat-run cities that have been run into the ground over 5 decades. Sometimes,
that's why you need the marijuana tax revenue
that has
in the
nothing
states.
to do with COVID.
Look, that's marijuana.
Marijuana does solve a lot of that. Do you think Congress will? You think Congress will get?
Think about it, Don.
How do you really feel on this, Will? How do you feel about these issues?
And Don,
your gut feeling. Do you think this is going to delay election results or not? In November?
Yeah, the timing's
all this
weird.
Stuff going on.
I don't know. Like I said, Anthony Fauci, who's been hailed as a hero of the left, said, I don't basically see why you couldn't vote in person. Again, you can take precautions. And for those who are in danger, do the absentee balloting system. I mean, I don't think it's as complicated as the Democrats want to make. They want to instill a system where, they can cheat. And it's that simple.
I think most states will allow in person. Has any state come out? Is Nevada has any state come out and said?
You can. I think you have to offer at least some in person option, right? I mean, even if you're offering full mail-in,
you're encouraging mail-in, but also offering in person. I would hope. We'll see.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Hey Don,
we'll see.
Who's doing the campaign ads over there? Because I got a bone to pick here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that Biden ad that came out last week, it was a complete. So I don't know if you know this, but I represent the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I manage that brand. You guys ripped off the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, used the footage without permission and the audio without permission. The campaign did. Who's doing the ads over there? That was a major rookie move. They literally.
I don't know. Normally they're pretty good about the IP stuff because they hit us on that whenever you can. I mean, you see what they got do to the guys that just come up with like a meme where they take like it's one word and it's like IP ripoff. So I'm not aware.
Oh no, they literally frame for frame took frames out of the film and cut them into that Joe Biden ad to make it look like the intro of the Texas
Beef showed us a
Chainsaw Massacre.
side by side. It was pretty convincing.
The beef literally represents the ownership of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
How does
You
that
wouldn't guess
happen,
it from the
Beef?
look.
Well, living in Texas, looking like this, Don, you get to hang with.
He made some good friends.
Opportunities
you
open up.
get associated with serial killers. Like that makes sense.
Hey, baby,
Yeah.
Chainsaws real.
Leatherface is
But yeah,
representative.
I need a number of someone. There's good. I mean, like the owners don't want to be involved in any political. We got a C and D.
Okay, I don't know anything. I wasn't involved, but
It's not you, Don.
we'll figure it out.
It's not.
Not in the campaign.
All right, I got one question. What's going on with China? Do you think this is gonna escalate to a war? Like China,
No, I
the
don't.
China,
I just think
China
that-
stuff is going and going and going. It's not looking good.
Well, China lied to us. They lied to the world. They shut down travel from Wuhan to Beijing and to Shanghai, but not to Milan and to New York. The reality is this: China's not a good player in the world. China looks out for China's interests, right? Joe Biden has built up China for decades. Joe Biden's going to be soft on China. His son took $1.5 billion from the Chinese government directly into his fund. That's $30 million a year in fees. The reality is this: we have to control some of our manufacturing. We have to control our supply chains. China literally threatened to not give us our antibiotics, meaning Pfizer came up with it, but we manufacture it in China because guys like Joe Biden have sent jobs, our American manufacturing jobs, to China for 5 decades, hoping that, hey, if we build up China, maybe they'll become a democratic country like us. It's failed. But this is their policy still. It's failed for 50 years, and they don't know any better. When Joe Biden started shilling for China, they had an economy the size of the Netherlands. The Netherlands, right? That's probably smaller than the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but you got our economy is somewhat dependent on their economy as well because they are our manufacturing outsource.
But right now, perhaps so, but they need us more than we need them.
But what do you say to people?
That won't always be the case. And so Donald Trump was the first guy to stand up to China and push back. He got a trade deal done and signed with them in January. They were going into phase 2 talks. I mean, that's like the holy grail of geopolitical politics and getting a trade deal done with these guys.
But what do you say to people
NAFTA with the USMCA? What
do you say to people who are worried that it'll escalate, that the tensions will escalate into actually military?
They're going to go
action?
to a war over it. I just don't see it. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's sort of typical fear mongering by politicians who literally have talked big game on the stump about these things, but have never done anything. Like, whether it's China, whether it's Iran, whether it's all, everyone talks a big game, but they failed miserably. Like, it's not like our foreign policy was working. Like North Korea, oh my God, Trump met with the guy. It's like, well, you're saying he's doing it all wrong. The reality is you've been leading the U.S. delegation for 40 years. You've never even had a conversation with the other guy. Like, maybe you're doing it wrong if you haven't moved the needle at all in 40 years. So, the reality is Trump is the guy that can take on these things. You saw it, right? Tariffs. It wasn't even all that popular with a lot of our people because they felt some short-term pain. But guess what? It led to a deal that will benefit us in the long term. And so that's the way life works. That's the way business works. There's no such thing as real instant gratification where you don't get anything. Sometimes you have to feel that pain. But if you don't do it now, there comes a point in time where they develop a critical mass where you'd never be able to do it. And that's sort of the brilliance of what Trump has been able to do and why others have failed. Look what he just did in the Middle East.
Right.
You get a peace deal in the Middle East.
And a China deal, yeah.
And a China deal. And you actually have relations with North Korea. And despite, sort of the Russia hysteria, the sanctions that this administration has put on Russia are 10x that of the Obama administration.
And he's going to meet with Putin again, right? So,
yeah, but the reality is this: they said, "Oh, it's terrible. He's meeting with Kim Jong Il." He doesn't think he's not a dictator, but if things go really bad, like it's nice to have that, like be able to pick up the phone and work it out, as opposed to you can go and say all sorts of stuff on a world stage about a guy who could then be a hermit, stay in his own country, murder some people, and like have no door to change it if and when things do escalate. So
you think Edward Snowden comes home out of that meeting? You think Edward Snowden comes home?
It's more progress than we've made in decades of the quote unquote experts saying they're experts but not actually delivering anything.
I've got another aliens type question for you.
Sweet.
Has your dad told you like at a dinner table or like joking around how Putin has told him about how he's like, personally killed this many journalists, like in a joking manner. Has any funny Putin murder stories you've heard?
No, I haven't heard anything like that.
All right.
Don, did you ever?
I should just say yes, just to watch the media's heads explode. Like,
Yes.
Don,
I can dominate the news cycle right now.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, let's do it.
What's Putin's preferred murder method?
Yeah, is Windows. Is throwing people out windows.
I don't know, but all I know is that Putin, based on the sanctions, and China, based on everything, they definitely would much rather have Joe Biden win.
Did you ever see Epstein creeping around Mar-a-Lago? Did you ever meet that guy? What?
No, we actually, we had heard rumors about this a long time ago, and I forget, maybe 20 years ago, they literally threw him out of Mar-a-Lago, and he was banned from the club.
In the 90s.
He was banned from there. He's a New York City billionaire, so that doesn't mean, I love watching, the documentary, and they keep showing the picture of him and Trump, but it's the same picture every time. But
what do you think they were talking about?
28 visits to the island with him on his plane. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
About
we were saying
2 years ago.
Clinton was on that plane more than the pilot, we said.
Correct. And, amazingly, I've heard that he signed off from his U.S. Secret Service detail to go down there. Why would you do that? I'm sure it's totally legitimate reasons. But so about 2 years ago, I get a call. There's a reporter from BuzzFeed or something like that said, hey, we have reliable sources that say that you, Don Jr., were on Epstein's plane going down to an island. I'm like, what are you nuts? And so this is 2 years ago. So I go, well, when was this? They go, 2005. I go, so you mean before anything, before anyone even knew anything. And I was like, well, it didn't happen. They were like, well, it doesn't matter. We're going to print. And you can see the guy was loving it. Anything he could do. I was like, well, do you have proof? He's like, well, I have two sources. So I find out the date. And it turns out I was going down to an island, but in the British Virgin Islands, not because a friend of mine was opening a big development there. And I guess Epstein was on the island at the time. But so I got lucky. I remembered who I flew down with, and I was able to get the flight logs showing that I was on that plane, meaning on a different plane, there and back with my wife, yada, yada, yada. And I showed it to the guy because he just figured you wouldn't be able to track down flight logs from, 15 years ago or 12 years ago? But I did, and it was like I ruined his life. So you can see them, they got one picture of a billionaire hanging out in New York with another billionaire, and it's like, oh, there's the connection. But they have no interest in looking at whether it's George Stephanopoulos having dinner with him, Bill Gates, after he was a convicted pedophile. After he went to jail for those things, some of the biggest names in American news media, some of the biggest names in tech, they're literally having dinner with the guy.
But Don,
that's no problem. But I have
how else are you going to get to have sex with the young whores? You got to go to Epstein, and I don't know.
That was the joke I put up. It was like, now that Trump's banning TikTok, you're going to have to just get videos of the Epstein flight logs with Bill Clinton to stare at 16-year-olds dancing inappropriately.
Yeah. I should take back whores. They were sex trafficked, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. The Q crowd really is getting creative with those abbreviations in the flight logs. They are... I got in a fight.
Yeah, you could have been on their shit list, and then that would have been a whole implosion.
I wasn't because, like I said, they can't. We didn't know the guy. We threw him out of Mar-a-Lago 2 decades before anyone else, did. But again, anything they can do to try to tie him to Trump, they're going all in, like they did to me. Like it was literally when I gave the flight logs to this reporter, I was like, "Your story's dead, or I'm going to sue your ass off now because it's bullshit." And it was like I ruined his life. It was literally like I took his lotto ticket and just ripped it up in front of his face.
You should have been like, you got me, and then let him print the story.
Yeah, you should have let him print and sue.
Oh no, how'd you find out?
Yeah,
that would have been.
The problem is the
funnier.
retraction. The retraction would be at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 weeks later. No one would see it, and they'd still run with the story as though it's gospel, just like they're doing with the Russia hoax today. I mean, literally disproven. FBI disproves it, and et cetera, et cetera, and. It's as though it's the gospel.
Yeah. All right. I think we got like one or two left.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask, so the latest polls being put out by, everyone, CNN, CBS, NBC, even Fox, have Biden leading between 7 and 10 points. Predicted even, our guys have him up by, 9 points if you can gamble on it, bet on it. What do you guys, have you any inside info about like the polls that you guys are conducting? What are the real polls, or how do you feel about that?
I think the reality is that, the polls are, oftentimes for me measured in enthusiasm. We heard the same thing in 2016, and I'm like, man, it's just not what I'm seeing in the crowds. The reality is this: after 3 months of straight rioting, et cetera, you see, conservatives being attacked in the streets, this, that, and the other. Like some random guy calls your house on a poll, like, I don't know. I could definitely be like, yeah, I'm writing in Jill Stein. You know, we heard that a lot last time. It didn't actually end up happening in a polling booth. Now, you know, we had a big discrepancy last time around between sort of the telephone polling and the digital polling that we do. Now, at a computer, when people were by themselves and no one was watching, it'll be our little secret. So we outperformed on our, the digital polling by 15% over large sample sizes, right? So not like you asked 3 people and it worked out that way, but over tens of thousands of people. So where, statistics would dictate that 2 things should be exactly the same.
Yeah.
When people were called by someone who they don't know where they're coming from,
well, that's the machine people have sex with. You know what I mean? And when you have sex with
I think the polls are obviously not like 16. They're not correct. I think it's going to be very close. Now, if depending on what happens in 2020 or 2024, when your father's not president anymore, is he going to come back to work at all? Or are you like, what's the deal with?
I don't know. It's interesting. I imagine not, in the sense that, he'll always work on something, but like, when we were doing real estate, and that's what we did, we built buildings, we built things, that was pretty exciting. But, when you give out a $2 trillion contract for the F-22 Raptor, like going and buying like windows for a building, it's just, I don't know. It's probably not that like exciting anymore. So
golf is going to be the only thing that really does it.
Let him retire, right? He's earned his rest, whether that, like I said,
I think he's earned it, but it's not his thing to retire. He's sort of a workaholic, so I'm sure he'll figure out a way to keep busy.
Hey, Don, you might know this from your earlier days, but I just had this problem pop up this morning. So I've been growing these Coke fingernails. As part of my vibe, and I bent my fingernail back this morning. Have you ever had that happen? Obviously not now, but in your college days. I'm just curious if you have any tips.
No, that was not my thing. So definitely drink, but the Coke thing was not my thing. But it looks good on you, man.
It hurt.
It sort of matches. It really matches the rest of the look. So
it completes it. It brings it together.
You should go to like the nail
does.
salon and get like just put it on the pinky, the one female nail, so that you can do it and have a good scoop.
No, I know.
I
got them both.
That's right.
That's what I told him. I said get a permanent artificial nail, then you don't have to worry about
the gel.
this. That's
what gel
I told
coating.
him.
I'm learning.
You could bedazzle the shit out of it and like make it really, bling it up, and it'll look good on you.
I'm learning.
Yeah.
Jesus.
All right, and then you got a new book out, Don. Liberal privilege, but the subtitle, Joe Biden and the Democrats' defense of the indefensible. What are we going with on the subtitle? I hear the apostrophe is in question. Are we talking royal Democrat?
It was. I actually jumped the gun pushing it a little bit when I was looking at it, because it was the first draft of what it was, and we were sort of going back and forth. But since Democrats is plural, it's plural possessive, so we're going with the apostrophe after the
Okay, you're going plural possessive. I was thinking the royal Democrat. Yeah,
it could, and it sort of worked either way. I sort of got into this argument with the editors. We were going back and forth and figured it out. But it was actually a book I wasn't even planning on writing. But the one thing that came out of sort of the quarantine and the lockdown was I had 4 months where I was sitting at home. Basically, I couldn't go to work. I couldn't go into the city. I couldn't do anything. So, I spent the time to sort of research, a guy that had a 50-year Washington, D.C. career who, made a lot of decisions that everyone seems to neglect and not want to talk about. So it was a good experience. I had a lot of fun doing it. I decided to also self-publish it just because a lot of the conservatives I know that are writing books these days, they're literally, being hit by their publishers and their editors. Like, hey, you're getting a little too conservative. You're getting a little this. Like, I just wanted to be able to put the message out. I also didn't love the optic of sort of signing a big book deal, because Triggered was really successful last year. I didn't want to do that when others were losing their jobs. So I just want to write the book. I want to get it out there, so you can pre-order it on my website, which is just donjr.com, like DONJR.com. And then I'll get it. It'll be on Amazon when it comes out. But
you're like the players. You're like the players in the Big Ten kicking the conference to the curb.
We cut the middleman.
Well, that's the thing.
Like
I moved so much of my book last time through my own social media channels, pushing through Amazon. The reality with a lot of the publishing houses, if they're going to limit you that way, they're going to do that. I mean, you're going in there to fund 20 books that aren't successful. I think I can get it out there, but I also didn't want to work on their time frame. I didn't want them to have the control. I wanted to get it out before the election, because I think if people are going to make a decision, since the media refuses to sort of report on what's actually going on, someone actually had to. So that's me.
You're like Stephen King at this point. You keep pumping out these books. Like at this point,
like I said, I wasn't even going to do it, but I had 4 months. I was bored out of my mind. I'm staying at home. I literally was like, I started looking into it. I was like, wow, there's actually a lot here.
I think I know what's going on. No, I think I know what's going on, Don. You want that free hard factor T-shirt? You're going to have this third book out pretty damn soon.
Now, when the book actually launches, you can pre-order it now on my website, donjr.com.
There you go.
When it actually launches, I'll come back on for the free shirt. Again, only
There
the
it is.
musty one. Only the musty. I have no interest in a
Hey,
clean
Don,
shirt.
don't worry
Fair
about that.
enough.
I got that for you. But one last thing. You said you,
We'll have him wear it for a week.
you said you didn't want to sign a big book deal when people are losing their jobs. How'd you feel about your stepmother redoing the Rose Garden? Because it was like a little bit like, come on, what are you doing right now in this tough economic
You know what?
time?
I didn't even know that was going on. I'm not involved, in all of that. So, I have no idea if that's even going on. If it is, it is. I guess those are some of the responsibilities of the first lady, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, no problem with that.
See if she
Give
can
it a
plant
facelift.
Well, I just mean a tough economic time. See if she could plant some weed in there. But yeah, I think I think that's it.
No. Speaking of the family, we need to know.
Oh, yeah.
We need to know how tall. Do you know a measurement?
What
How
is he-
tall is Barron right now?
what is he eating?
I don't know.
And is he being recruited by college basketball teams? Yet?
If he's not, he should be, and he should get into basketball because no, he's got. I mean, he's 14. He's got to be 6'6" right now. I mean, he's taller than my brother, and
Yeah.
my brother's 6'5".
Oof.
At 14, so it's like I'm the runt of the family at 6'1", 190, and I'm like a midget. Like
That's
it's
not
pretty
fair.
bad.
He
That's
looks like
not
he has
fair.
room to grow. It's crazy.
Yeah, and with
Well,
Barron,
by the way, you actually get to a point where like I don't know that I'd want I almost rather be 6'1" than 6'6". Like there's a point where it's like starts getting
yeah.
He's going to be able to
Well,
dunk
he's
without
not-
jumping.
He's
It's
not going to
crazy.
be 6'6". He's going to be 6'10". Look at his legs. Like he's got room to grow. He's not done growing.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. He's got definitely some growth potential left.
Someone needs to recruit that kid.
For sure. Don, thanks for coming on again.
Hey guys, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Don. Sorry to hear about your uncle again.
Yes,
yeah,
we are.
Thank you guys.
Condolences.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
It means a lot.